Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Tuesday, July 21st, 2026, and today we're talking about, well, where I've been, but also why there are no perfect tools and about my first impressions of burlap as shade and ground cover from the field. So let's do it. All right, everyone, welcome to Till Tuesday, your weekly reminder that you can get living soil compost and potting mixes from the bona fide nerds over there at Tilth Soil. Check out Nathan on the Composter Podcast Season 4, Episode 3, or head to tilthsoil.com to learn more. I hope your weeks are off to a wonderful start. I am officially back and ready to give you an all-new novel ramble, but first, I should say that the reason you had exclusively compilation episodes these past, 4 days, is that I was in Colorado for the last week visiting my brother and my sister. I've got to see my sister a few times in recent years, luckily, but because of how crazy our jobs are and how far away we live from each other, I haven't really got to see my brother in many years, nor had I even met my almost 7-year-old nephew. So it was a great trip and a rare one to boot, as I never really get away in the summer. I don't think Hannah and I have ever taken a summer vacation any more than a few days, at least not since we've owned a farm. Now, I'm not going to regale you with my family stories from the weekend, but I thought I would take this first segment to talk a little bit about one of the elements of this trip that I thought you all might find interesting, or at least may spark some conversation, and just what it was like to experience such a dry climate in the summer after so many years in wet, humid East, or Midwest, I suppose, as Kentucky is often referred. Now, to be clear, I was born in Colorado and spent more or less the first 11 years of my life there, so it was not a completely foreign land to me, but it had been 20 years or so since I was there last. But still, if you've ever been what the heck is Jesse's accent? It's what we call a mess. Part Kentucky, part Colorado, with a sprinkling of New York City and maybe some Southern Illinois in there. It's weird. Anyway, it was a nice return, but seeing the world where you grew up through adult eyes is always a rich experience because you notice so many more things than you could have ever seen as a kid, especially in my nerdy little case, when it comes to ecology. First, the wildlife. There is so much wildlife in Colorado. Many of the conversations that I had with my brother, in fact, and others who live in Fort Collins were about run-ins with wildlife, with bears and mountain lions, bobcats, deer, rabbits, snakes, birds, and just everything up there. I honestly ate it up. I got to see elk. I got to see a rattlesnake, pika, trout, so many things. I love Kentucky, but the range of wildlife here is a little vanilla, to be honest. But in that part of Colorado, it's big and bold, the life. It's everywhere. As an ecosystem, it doesn't scream alive exactly, especially while I was there when it was in kind of a deep drought where everything was pretty brown. But there is this interesting undercurrent of life just bubbling below the surface. Not a lot of bugs, but a lot of macro creatures. And I do remember that as a kid. I remember getting training in school for what to do if you ran into a bear or a mountain lion or a rattlesnake. And I'm sure Colorado farmers will roll their eyes, especially those who have, lost chickens to bears or bobcats, which is fine. I get that, but I really enjoyed it. I'm sure there are as many negative things to say about the state of ecology in Colorado as there are positive, if not more so. And as far as I can tell, Colorado State University has one of the only ecological restoration degrees from a university in the country, with many restoration projects around the state. So that's pretty cool. But Coloradans should also be proud to have, that much life there, especially as the urban sprawl sits in such stark and depressing contrast. For real, Denver, you need to chill a little bit. However, predators like those big ones I mentioned are generally the sign of a healthy environment. And if the sheer number of rabbits we saw there are any indication, it's got the prey to support more large predators, which is maybe why they've recently introduced wolves. To be clear, statistically, Colorado's still headed in the wrong direction on many fronts, but all that life to me is something to be a little bit excited about and provides a little hopefulness, maybe some potential, when taken into consideration with the rich culture of outdoorsiness that is Colorado. That place seems primed to me to make a big environmental leap. It could become a symbol in the U.S. of what good environmental stewardship could look like in the modern context. I'm not giving it that credit now, to be clear, just saying it could be. Fire management, water management, ecological restoration, good farming, good, national park management, etc. Colorado is not there yet, but it feels like if anyone out west could do it, it is Colorado. And frankly, the states out there will have to do something or really a lot of things. Quoting the Colorado 2026 strategic report, quote, Colorado is facing many increasing challenges. Some of these challenges include wildfires, pollution of river and clean water supplies, climate change, population growth, increased recreation pressures, habitat fragmentation, and biodiversity loss, end quote. I mean, yeah, they had next to no snow this year, which is brutal on the economy and ecology alike. So clearly things do have to change. But I do feel like Colorado can do it. They won't have a choice ultimately, but hopefully with the right legislation and the right attitude from the residents, it certainly feels like it has the potential. Anyway, there were a lot of other things I picked up on my trip, but more on all that later. And I did rather enjoy the wildlife. Our Merlin app definitely got a good workout this week. So yeah, let me know your thoughts. I know I'm a worthless, hopeless romantic when it comes to, what I think people and states could do, but what do you all say? Otherwise, I feel like I should say something like, it's good to be back, but I mostly just kind of feel overwhelmed now having taken several days off in midsummer, but oh well, we shall recover. In the meantime, let's take a quick break. When we come back, the most perfect tool in the world may not be a tool at all, or something along those lines. We'll find out. BRB.
Hello, Farmer Jesse. Here is one of my market gardening growing areas. And here's my other market gardening growing area.
Want to harvest seeds adapted to your farm, but you're thinking, look, I have a market farm to run. I'm way too busy weeding and picking tomatoes. I'm Dan Briesbla, and I'm here to tell you that you can grow seed on your farm without losing your mind. On the Seed Farmer podcast and in my book, The Seed Farmer, I share exactly how busy growers make seed crops work alongside a bustling farm business. Find The Seed Farmer wherever you get your books and podcasts. Go grow some seeds.
All right, so as always, if this show is something you enjoy and it brings you any sort of actual value to your life or farming or gardens, and you could afford to do so, consider chipping in a few bucks over there at patreon.com/no-till-growers. The whole thing is we are trying to keep our information free and open to everyone. And frankly, that has always been a struggle, and it seemingly gets harder every year. So your contributions do make a huge difference. Also, as a bonus, I'll answer those Patreon questions that you all put up in the show threads, like this one from Patreon member Ryan, who asks, quote, I have a large home garden. Recently, I'm realizing that a wheel hoe could be very useful for clearing paths, cultivating, preparing beds, and dealing with some cover crop residue. Tools are expensive, and there are many options with respect to number of wheels, height, attachments. I don't want to misfire and buy a less than optimal tool for my situation. I have found a battery-powered tilter has not been powerful enough to mix anything. I have been using my tiller at a shallow depth and have a low throttle to accomplish various things. I have small, narrow tillers, but they often break under pressure. I would like to till less and fire up engines less. How can these tools help me? Your podcast is fantastic. Thanks, end quote. Okay, so this is a great question, and it's a little complimentary to last week's In the Field segment that I did with the tilter, where I do talk a little bit about what it can and can't do. So everyone should go check that out if you have not already. Anyway, the big thing professional growers all learn to appreciate in farming and gardening is that there are no perfect tools, only perfect systems. What I mean is that a tool that works for one farm or garden won't necessarily work for another because the systems are different, the goals are different, the execution is different, the soils and their quality are different, rocks, clay, all the things. For now, the tilter might not be the right tool for you, but that may just be because your soil is dense and needs a lot of soil organic matter. In that way, a tiller with a precision depth roller, at least for the time being, might be the right call. This is where your perfect systems idea comes into play. If your system is headed towards soil that is lighter, fluffier, less compacted, healthier, etc., that will open up what tools will be quote unquote perfect in that system and reduce your reliance on the heavier ones. Put another way, if you're using a lot of compost and organic matter in that soil, it will make it easier to use, like simple hand tools and battery-powered tools to work it, or maybe to not have to work the soil at all. Like I always say about the broad fork, it's a tool that, when used right, makes itself obsolete. That's what you want, a system that, gets you away from, too much reliance on tools. So what would that look like? Well, maybe for now it's a wheel hoe for the pathways, a broad fork and a stirrup hoe for the beds, and a tiller with a precision depth roller that keeps it just, keeps it really shallow for the tilth, with a lot of good compost mixed in, in a consistent plant cover. That's the system. Over time, the soil will loosen itself enough that the broad fork in the tiller will feel like overkill, and you can just move to more gentle tools like the tilter, or even just maybe like a rake and a stirrup hoe. If you want to get away from engines, your systems have to move in that direction with you. This is related, but also perhaps a bit unrelated. But I see a lot of times where folks seek out the best tools in an industry when they first get into it. Like when some people get into photography, for instance, they just assume they need the best camera and the best lenses. But if you don't know how to use a basic camera, the best camera is not going to teach you how to frame a shot, how to understand aperture or shutter speed or exposure or whatever. An experienced photographer can shoot a better photograph on a lesser camera than an inexperienced photographer on the best camera. Why? Because the experienced photographer has systems. They know how to frame the shot, adjust for optimal, settings given the light available, and etc. As I often say, it's not the tool, but the user who makes the success. So design the system around your context and then get the tools that will make your system possible, but not just possible, that will set your system up to need less and less intervention. Anyway, did that answer the question? I hope so, and listeners can let us know what you all think. Otherwise, I think we will take a quick break and then head to the field to talk to one such tool that could potentially reduce people's plastic usage to get their instant reaction on what I just said. This should be exciting. Be right back.
Farmer Claire Coleman here from the Winter Growers Podcast. Did you know that I also founded Real Farmer Care, a nonprofit that supports farmer well-being? From my own experiences farming, I knew firsthand that this type of support was missing from ag, so I decided to do something about it. As of today, there are over 500 farmer recipients of a $100 self-care award, with more applying daily. If you'd like to help, each $100 donated supports one new farmer. Visit realfarmercare.com to donate and learn more. Again, that's realfarmercare.com.
All right, so we're going to head out to the field to get a little video on my first impressions of using burlap in the field. So far, I have germinated carrot seeds in the spring with it and used it a little bit for shade cloth as well as ground cover to, decent success. Now, as I say in the video, the only burlap I could find this spring I guess this winter or whatever, when I was ordering it for our 4-foot by 50-foot beds was not as tightly woven as what, say, for instance, Ben Hartman has been recommending. So it wasn't a perfect trial, and I plan to maybe trial a little bit more. But anyway, I'll talk about all that and look forward to hearing your thoughts. So here is me in the field. Enjoy.
Okay, so I am pulling out these squash. They're all pretty done. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull them out. Summer squash. Below me, you can see all these weeds because I used some burlap as an experiment underneath of the squash, and it did relatively okay. But this is a little bit. I used the 7 ounce. I think you're supposed to use the 10 ounce. So if you are going to use burlap, don't use 7 ounce, use 10 ounce. That would probably work a little better. In general, I think it's a good idea. Like, I love the idea of getting away from plastic. I've never been a fan of landscape fabrics anyway. Like, I don't use it really on our farm at all, except for like occultation. But like, I definitely don't, in general, plant into it because I just like having open soil there that I can plant, a cover crop or whatever into, or a cash crop like the interplanting that we did the other day. But yeah, I mean, I like the idea. I certainly think it's got legs, and if I'd used a thicker fabric and had maybe some better weed control before this went in, it would be okay. But now getting it out is going to be a pain. So it's going to be a lot of work. So if you are going to experiment with some burlap, I wouldn't experiment with the 7 ounce. I'd use the 7 ounce for shade. I think that's how Ben Hartman's been doing it. And then the 10 ounce if you're going to use it as a ground cover. It's more on me than the fabric. I still think it's a cool idea. And if you are a fabric fan, then I would try a little burlap. All right, now I'm going to take all the squash and the burlap that's left in there, which you can't see, it's at the bottom of this. But all the squash, zucchini and stuff, and take the burlap, and I'm going to put that in the compost pile. It shouldn't have any problem breaking down, as rotten as it already is, just sitting on the surface. It shouldn't have any problem breaking down in a long-term compost pile. So yeah, I mean, I kind of failed the burlap, and rather than the burlap failing me, I still think it's a good idea. We'll keep playing with it. And like here's where the peppers were, and you could see, like, I'm just going to have to cut this out around the peppers because it's just so much stuff is growing up underneath this that it's it's becoming a problem, and it's going to go to seed, and it's just going to make a mess under here. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that up. I think the idea was there, but I should have not used the 7 ounce. I just thought the weed control was a little better than it was under here because we had a cover crop here. I think it was okay, but ultimately, I should have used either a thicker burlap or not used burlap at all and just done it like I did the other peppers, which now I've removed all the lettuce from. So, yeah. There's no way that's staying up there. That didn't work. New squash.
All right, I hope you all enjoyed that little journey into the land of me playing around with burlap. I think overall I like the idea of burlap a lot, but ultimately I don't love dealing with any sort of ground covers personally, like planting into them. They just don't fit my temperament or systems, as mowing around them can be quite challenging. However, as a shade cloth or as an assistant, with germinating things, I could definitely see myself getting some good use out of the burlap, maybe even some, light frost protection. I would definitely love to move away from plastics in general, and I think burlap definitely has some potential there. But again, there are no perfect tools, and burlap is no exception. The system has to be right for it to thrive, and where it might fit my system will be different from where it will or possibly won't fit in yours. Anyway, I think that is it for this Till Tuesday. Feels good to be back and have an epic ton of work to do. So yeah, don't forget, because how could you really at this point, that No Till Growers is a nonprofit 501c3, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That is an easy way to help us out as well. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors, and if you'd ever like to sponsor the show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at notillgrowers.com. Big thank you to Michelle. Big thank you to the No Till Growers Board of Directors. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music, Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing, and my wife Hannah for absolutely everything in the world. Also, shouts to my brother. His company in northern Colorado, should you ever need any heating or air work, is called Homegrown Heating and Air. I'll even link that in the show notes. Pick up a hat or a copy of my book, The Living Soil Handbook, at notillgrowers.com to support this work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/notillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or you sign up in the month of July, you get a shout on the show. So big shout outs this week to Austin Thomas. Shouts, Austin. And I will reward you with a story for the week. This week's story is about Lindsay, a 4-year-old who lives in the mountains. And Lindsay won't sit still, basically ever. If she's awake, she's on the move. It's been like this since she was 1 and 10 days, I think, is when she took her first step. I don't know why that's specific, but anyway, up the stairs, down the stairs, just everywhere. She is a mover. And, well, this is not great in the mountains where, as we talked about in today's show, there are some wildlife about. And anyway, one day, young Lindsay manages to elude her parents. What happens next is the thing of legends. But that is for tomorrow. Sign up spending on the wildlife. But you have to separate life and wild. It makes it intriguing that way. Anyway, thanks for watching and or listening. We'll see you tomorrow.